Welcome to Ace of Pentacles, your career strategy and workplace wellness podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, and I'm so happy you're here. Join me every week as we investigate how people design and discover their way through their careers. Together, we'll explore the science of well-being at work and discover tools and strategies to help us do well and be well. Sure, Lyons, welcome to Ace of Pentacles. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. Asher, you are the founder and visionary behind Medicine Theater, an expressive arts organization with a mission to support people, young and old, in finding liberation, joy, and healing through the art of spontaneous play and mythic story creation. And you've been doing this for at least 23 years, maybe more?
Yeah, professionally, 23, 24 years now, I think it is. Yeah, 24 years. And then for myself, for playing and doing improv, it's been since my high school years. So we're looking at like 35 years now. Oh, man.
Oh.
Never
I
thought
would
of that
love,
before.
yeah, absolutely. I want to dig into your story and learn more about what brought you onto this path. But the reason why you're here is because I took a class with you. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to go out there and explore and see what ways there are that we open ourselves up to the world and go through the process of transformation, sometimes organically, a lot of the times organically, and sometimes very intentionally. And so I've taken an improv class once before and I didn't like it, and it was in a work setting. And so I gave it another shot and I took yours and I was obsessed. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do this every week. And then I sprained my ankle, so I haven't been back. But I want to talk about my experience a little bit as well. But first, let's get started by talking about you. Tell us what got you into improv and tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, thanks. Let's see. I remember originally as a child, I was really into theater. I was really into comedy. I was the class clown growing up. And I would use, the class clown could be used to bring people up or cut people down. And sometimes it was just to get attention because I wanted more attention. A lot of the time it was for attention. But I found that it could be a great tool for bringing joy and celebration and bringing people together. And I love getting people laughing. I could also use it in that trickster way where I was, upsetting the teachers quite a bit and getting myself into trouble. So there's that fine line of how we work with those energies. I was a huge fan growing up of Second City Television, SCTV with Gilda Radner, Eugene Levy, Martin Short. And I just loved comedy. And then I got myself into acting. But in high school, I found out that improv was such a great way to get into the spontaneity in the play. And I love what would come out. I love the way I would feel when I was in that improv, I guess, the zone, the flow state, or as Viola Spolin calls it, the intuitive knowing dimension of play, which is I later to understand that concept when I got older. So that's a little bit there.
Yeah, I hear that. It's the intuitive, what did you call it? The intuitive dimension.
She calls it intuitive knowing, and there's like a longer sense of the intuitive knowing dimension of play. And Viola Spolin, for those who don't know who she is, she's the grandmother of improv as we know it in the U.S. and Canada. Almost all improv roads kind of go back to her or Keith Johnstone. And but she started earlier, back in the 1940s. I believe improv, improv has always been part of all humans since the beginning of time, all of life, that spontaneous, that play and learning through play. You see, that's how nature and animals and young humans and hopefully we get to have that connection through our whole life. But unfortunately, a lot of people get stuck into different things and we like, wait, what happened to the play, But from her perspective, the deepest learning happens when you're in a state of play. And that was really the beginning for Viola Spolin. Her teacher was a woman named Neva Boyd in Chicago. When they started off working with at-risk inner city youth in Chicago and trying to get them to learn and finding that preaching to them wasn't always so helpful. But if they applied these games and they got them in a state of play and the rules of the game, or they called them the task at hand, would guide them, and you'd want to follow the rules because following the rules led to a really fun game. And, we find that sometimes when you're a kid, the only time you ever want to follow rules is inside of a game. Otherwise, it's like, that's in the way. I hate rules. I'm tired of these rules. But for some reason in games, all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, you got to follow the rules. You broke the rule, and then like it's a whole different deal. So improv began from these games with the children, and she found out that it was just universal, and then it grew out of that, and then two of her first students that were children at the time were Alan Alda and Alan Arkin, who grew up to be
Mm.
like some of the greats in terms of improv and comedy and acting, and her son Paul Sills, and he started the Compass Players, and that was the first theater in the country that had no director and no playwright. It was all through improv. They created these plays and these stories, and that grew into Second City in Chicago, and Second City, Chicago, and then also in Canada, and there's one in LA, and those became a lot of the pickup school for Saturday Night Live.
Mm.
That's where it all kind of, a lot of it began, right there.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that intuitive knowing to me is piece is so interesting. The first time I did improv was at work in our work setting, and a team came in and led us through these different activities. And then when I took it years later at Berkeley Alembic with you, I realized I was approaching it probably incorrectly in the workplace because I was very much like, I'm at work and this has to be like a structured activity and there's some goals and you have to do this correctly. Like there's a right way to do it. And I realized that was a very different experience when I took myself out of the workplace and went somewhere else and I worked with you because there was this weird, it was like there was no pressure to be funny. I think I'm a funny person, but I felt like improv, like you have to like be funny. And I'm like, I can't like be funny on demand. When I took it with you, it was such a cool group of people. And I remember the intuitive knowing came up and like that was such a big part of it. And I was like, oh, I was actually doing this all wrong the first time.
That's so common.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about, I know that you work with people all over the Bay Area and are you outside of the Bay Area as well or just in the Bay Area?
Yeah, I do classes all around the Bay Area and also up in Grass Valley as well.
Okay. Yeah.
I've gone to different places beyond that, but that's
Mm.
mostly where I've gone so far.
Okay.
But in the
Yeah.
imaginal realms, we go everywhere.
Yeah.
In the creative,
Yeah.
we call it the creative liberation portal. We travel to all kinds of landscapes. So, uh,
Yeah.
whole other story.
Do you have a methodology or an approach that you think is kind of sets you apart from other practitioners in your area or people that do like team building events? Because I know you work with adults and I know it's a little bit, you have a little bit of a different twist on it than I think people that I've seen go out there and do like team building, specifically in organizational settings.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Viola Spolin method is I have a mentor named Gary Schwartz, and I've had the opportunity to meet with him a few times. And Gary is one of Viola Spolin's last, true living students. And she really, before she passed, really said that he was one of the few people left that were really, truly, authentically following the Viola Spolin method. But Gary shared some things about the method and a lot of people have the Viola Spolin method in there, but they've gone down different roads or directions. For example, yes and is a core principle that has really gone into so many areas of team building and collaboration and working together, right? It's this idea that, we don't say no, we don't create a blockade, but we say yes and we incorporate that together and we co-create together. And there's a lot of great things about that. But Gary said that Viola Spolin didn't like that at all. And that was never part of the approach, the yes and. And I don't remember all the reasons of how it ended up being there, what happened, but she would talk about of instead of yes and, it's follow the follower. And following the follower is a core exercise in the improv where, first you start off where like, you're leading and I'm following you. And then we switch. So one of us is leading, one of us is following. So we're getting into that practice a little bit. But then we go into following each other. And now it's like, okay, wait a minute. It's like, well, what's going on here? Are you leading? Am I following you? And you can get to a point where the lines become skewed of who is leading this. And if we're just following each other, what's actually happening? Well, when we get to that place, it's that intuitive knowing dimension of play. It's that place beyond control. It's the place beyond the mental constraints and where we're not even there's an energy beyond that, beyond thinking, beyond the mind. We're in the state of play and the state of joy that's kind of guiding the ship. And from there is like the gateway into all the story of all the creative imagination of all the play. And that's really I think what sets this work apart, there's many things. That's one of the core principles that I think that sets it apart because gosh, there's so many ways where we want to be in control. We need to be in control. Like the fear of if I don't guide this properly, I'm going to fail. Or if I don't get up there and have something clever or witty or smart to say, I'm going to fail and everyone's going to know I failed. So I have to have something ready. But what if I let go of that? What if I trust that you have everything that I need and that at the same time, you're trusting that I have everything that you need and the space does and the imaginal world does. And then we just play. And so we go into a deep listening from there. That follow the follower, like it opens up a space of like, I'm now just listening to you and you're just listening to me. And there's something occurring beyond everything else that guides us. And there's so many just like beautiful stories that can wake up from that space and just creative possibilities. And that's when we're really we talk about like being at the edge of the cliff. And the next step over the cliff is just open air. And it's the scariest thing. And there's a depiction of the sacred fool, right? In the tarot deck. And the sacred fool is at the edge of the cliff. And there's all kinds of interpretations of that. But the way that we like to look at it is the fool is at the edge of the cliff. And one next step is everything that we don't know. There's no solid ground. There's no reference point to anything in like the Buddhist perspective. Where do we go now? And everything we're standing on, everything behind us is everything that we have a reference point to that we know. But one more step, we're stepping into that place of like, oh man, what are we going to do? And so it's stepping into that, the vast expanse, the not knowing. Lyons talks about the fear is not of the unknown, it's of the not knowing because it hasn't happened yet. And that scares the hell out of us. And that's so much of why improv can be so scary, to play again, to play with what we don't know and to allow ourselves to come without a script. And growing up, it's like, okay, you study for the test and then you take it. If you don't study for the test, you're going to fail. And so in this
Yeah.
Western linear culture, we're trained that we have to be prepared for the moment, even though we also, we like to pretend that we do know, but we don't actually know what's going to happen. I call this work, death training because we're playing with everything we don't know yet. The next moment is the unknown. And we're scared of the fact that we don't know what's going to happen in that next moment. But if we can get into a state of play and just play with it, then we can get over so much fear. And that's why this work can be really applied to anything. I call it the open-ended, limitless possibility variety pack prayer because we are training to be prepared for the spontaneous moment, which is real life. And the scripted, linear, calendar-driven, Western kind of reality is like, it's great in the ways it is great, but it also leaves out an important element, which is the spontaneous, mysterious unknown, which is like, oh, maybe you sprain your ankle. What are you going to do now? You got to figure out a new creative way to walk around, take care of your life, So that's something right there. I can go on and on, but I'll pause for a
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I agree. I think it's very much a practice in letting yourself lose control, not needing to have everything figured out. And what's really fascinating to me is, I remember the first activity that we did. I was still in that mind space of, okay, Sarah, plan what you're going to do because you can't screw this up because people are watching. And so we were back to back with our partners and you said, turn around and, we're going to turn around and we're just going to start playing. And so in my head, I'm like, oh, I know what I'll do. There's going to be a door. I'm going to knock on the door. And so I turn around and the partner that I had is knocking on a door.
No way.
Yeah, he's knocking on a door. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then from there, I feel like there were multiple moments where it's almost like we were so in sync that I'm thinking something and then he does it. And then we talked about this after, he's thinking something and I do that, But it's funny because I reflected on this afterwards and I was like, it's like you're not trusting, but then it teaches you that there's something else there that can hold you, that space that holds all of us, and we can trust it. And so I thought that was super fascinating. That was one of the highlights of my experience.
Wow. I love that story. And I love those kind of stories of like, wow, there's something just happened that was beyond my thought or that intuitive connection. And Spolin talks a lot about that. Viola Spolin is her name. And she talks a lot about that whole idea of the exercises and the games, they open up that intuitive knowing. And then it's like, wow. And this idea that what connects us together is everything that we can't see. Lyle Spohn would always say, "Go out and meet the invisible stranger." Well, who's that? It's everything that we can't see. And so then we become artists painting pictures and spaces, as opposed to talking heads trying to share information, trying to do anything, trying to be clever, trying to be funny, trying to even be emotional or start a fight. Like, we're efforting to try to make something happen because we feel like if we don't, we're going to fail, and we have to get control over the situation by, taking control of it, making something happen, which is so much of, I think, in life, what we're trained to do to be quote unquote successful, you know, but then we're leaving out so much of life when we do that because we're leaving out the listening part. And the listening part is, in a way, the intuitive part. It's like, if I'm trying to make something happen, how do I trust you? How do I trust the space? How do I trust the elements and nature and life itself and all the people that are in the space that I'm supposedly working with? So training ourselves to do that, I think, is really applicable to every aspect of our life, professional settings, whether you're facilitating, we're creating with people, we're collaborating in life with people all the time. And what if we trusted them more? What if we actually stopped and listened to them and actually applied follow the follower to our life to see what happens, I know it's been huge just for me. So yeah.
Yeah. I would even go as far as to say what would happen if we trusted ourselves more, because that lack of trust in people around us, I think it very much is a reflection of a lack of trust in ourselves as well.
Yeah.
Asher, you get to see people, you get to watch people kind of take off their masks and peel back the layers of who they are. And I think that's such a beautiful space to exist in. And I want to hear from you. Are there any stories or any moments that specifically stand out for you in all the years that you've been doing this work that have been really powerful?
Yeah. And watching people and they're
Yeah.
just stepping in their vulnerable, true expression. I mean, every night I work, and I don't just do this work with adults, but I've done it with youth. I work in the juvenile justice system, working there, working with little kids from 5 years old all the way through, early 20s to the older youth. And then, of course, grown-ups all the way up into their 80s. Actually, I had a woman who was 96 come to my class a few times last year, and she was awesome. We really we can play together where we let that part of ourself out where it's vulnerable. It just is innately vulnerable because getting into a state of play is vulnerable because we're taking off our mask. I think so much as we're sculpted into this version of our identity that we create that doesn't involve the playful being that we are. I mean, I don't know how many times as a kid I was told, like, stop playing, stop playing. And I mean, I was a goofball, I was a clown, so I heard it a lot. But I think we all hear that at some point, some more than others. But I think in this society, we're really taught, like, hey, if you keep playing around, messing around, you're not going to make it. You're not going to be successful. You got to focus. You got to become serious. You got to work. And if you look in indigenous cultures that are intact, they value, at least in my experience and stories I've heard, the state of play and children and giving them that space to play, which is what Spawn was really, and Neva Boyd, her teacher, were catching of, like, in that state of play, we are most available for learning. And so what I've seen in the classes is like people getting in touch with that. And I love it. People coming for the first time and maybe experiencing a part of themselves that they haven't since they were a kid or for many years or just for a long time or maybe even ever. One student come and I talk about, yeah, we get in touch with that part of ourselves when we were 3 years or 4 years old, that innocence, that original innocence of joy, talk about it that way. And he was just like, at the end of class, like, man, I never even got that. Like, my household was not a safe place. So I never had the opportunity to experience it. So he was just in a state of joy to get to feel that part of himself for the very first time. And he was in his early 60s when he came. Just witnessing that is so profound. Sometimes it's just being in the simple state of play that's really moving and can bring people to tears. We always have a closing kind of circle at the end. What is something you're taking away from this experience? And just that joyous state of play can be it. Other times, something is mirroring or reflecting their life, something in the story, because we We play the games, we get into that state, and then we co-create a mythic improvised story that we play together. And that goes into silliness, depth, can be grief, very creative characters and story threads. And there's just like, it's wherever it goes. We just create a safe, trusting container to play. And then from there, it goes wherever it goes. But sometimes the story will reflect real aspects of someone's life. I think of the work, it works very similar to how dreams work, that non-linear kind of like, wow, okay, what was that piece? And
Yeah.
there's so many stories. I had a story where I don't want to say too much because it's personal, obviously, but just someone having an experience where all of a sudden they were in a scene where someone's playing their mom, and the way it played out was a reflection of something that they really experienced in their life that was painful. And then like the universal mother came and like freed them from this experience of that pain. And these people not knowing anything about their real personal life. And suddenly, you know, just healing experiences like that can happen.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that I walked away with while I was taking your classes. It's almost like you allow yourself to get to a place within you that becomes a mirror. Like that space becomes a mirror for you in some ways. For me, part of the towards the end when we created that story together, I had kind of a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually how I actually do life. Like the character that I was playing in the story was very much who I am at my core. And being someone that is constantly looking for something. It's always like searching or looking for something. And it made me it was like a mirror for me where I was like, oh my gosh, I've never actually thought about myself like that. But I see that now. I see that's like at my core, it's who I am. And I think that's really special. I think being able to see that about yourself, I think is really valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Sure. We are told when we're children, and at some point, we're getting ready to grow up, right? Or like adults around us are like, oh, like stop being a kid and stop playing. And like the play it has to go away. It has to be like put away. But you shared that you were a goofball and, you would get this feedback from adults around you. And then you turned around and turned play into your job. What what is that like? Tell us what that feels like.
That's good. Well said. Yeah, it's so wild, like how we end up doing what we're doing. And I find that if we're lucky, we get to end up offering back something that helped us, and then we can offer it back. And being a state of play really helped me break through so many hard moments in life, And it's like I was talking about earlier, it's a fine line, we can take it, we can use it, it can spin us out. I think of like the state of humor and play is one of the most powerful, I think, it's a really powerful energy. You see, I mean, we love it. We idolize comedians, and we put them up on these pedestals, and you see some of the greats, spin out and kind of lose their life. And some of my favorites like Robin Williams, and whom else am I thinking of? Chris Farley, and others. Some of them made it through and survived it. I was watching the George Carlin documentary recently and seeing how much like just the years and years of just drugs and just he got through that. But it can really spin us out. That energy is so powerful, and you can use it as a weapon. I do anti-bullying work in schools also, and a lot of what is the core of the bullying is actually using humor as a weapon to hurt people. That's some of the worst, most, you get be the grunt of the joke in front of other people. It's horrible. But then we can use it to lift each other up and create joy. And that's what I got inspired by. I really found, like, I remember being in high school being like, I want to use it to lift people up. I remember focusing on cultures that I wrote a paper in high school about cultures, using humor in hard times to survive as a survival mechanism, and like real accounts of people that and cultures that when they stayed in touch with humor, it actually kept them alive, kept them thriving, or kept them going. I was really moved by that. But I also saw I'm Jewish, and I saw in like Jewish culture like self-deprecating humor, which I think anyone can have self-deprecating humor, but I saw it as kind of like a theme. I watched a lot of comedians that I thought were funny when I was younger, but then I was like, gosh, they're really putting themselves down or putting their own people or their own families down. I think you see that a lot in stand-up comedy. You can where like it's about kind of making fun of themselves or making fun of others. And I got to a point where I was like, man, what about a humor that lifts, that's uplifting, that lifts each other up? And I went on this search and a journey to find like, how can we elevate this? Why does it have to be about like putting something down for us to laugh? And I found this and I found like, wow, the humor is really based on that state of joy. And really the perspective is I'm here to help you and I need help. I need to help myself and I want to help you. And we're here to help each other. And we're collaborating through this like co-created playful story work to manifest that. But the humor is really about the vulnerable moment. And the vulnerable moment is there's something there, and I see it like 1 minute, the vulnerable moment can be, there's grief, there's sadness, there's something emotional. And the next minute it's like really silly. And the way those can marry together and weave together, that's what blew my mind. That's what I was like, wow, I love this. I love story that can do that. I'm not sure if I strayed from the question, but if you want to bring me back a little bit, I'm
No,
riffing here a little.
this is great. This is great. I think what you do is so important, Asher, because especially now, not just with youth, but with adults too. I feel like we live in this world that's very made up, right? We can choose to like I don't edit these recordings too much, but I can go through and I can piece things together and make it seem like someone said something that they didn't. Or you go online and there's social media. There's like the social media image of you and how you show up, and then there's the real you. And I think the reason why I love what you do is that you allow people to bring the real version of themselves out. And I think that's becoming more and more rare in our world to have the space to be able to do that. So I think it's super important, and thank you for doing the work that you do. I want everyone to come try out one of your classes, which is why you're on here, because I'm like, everyone should go meet Asher and go to medicine theater. Tell me a little bit about what are ways that people can come learn from you and play with you.
Yeah, thank you. We do classes in the Oakland Hills in this redwood forest. There's a fireplace there, and we do it around the fire. So we call it the Mythic Story Fire. We do classes pretty ongoingly. We'll have a 6-week series. We might take a break for a week or two and then start back up again. So that goes through all the year that's possible, the non-rainy season. And then, there's classes in Berkeley at the Alembic. They host me there monthly. I'm doing classes in Sebastopol on a monthly basis over there. And also up in Grass Valley, we do some classes as well. And then we do some retreats. So we have a winter retreat and a summer retreat. I also want to mention that my dear friend, Mark, he weaves in all live music into the classes, and he brings in instruments and charangos and flutes and soundscapes and the sound of thunder and frogs, and we weave in these sounds and musical accompaniment into the story. He's been doing it with me for about 12 years now. It just started organically and it became a thing, and now he's become the mythic narrator in the story, where he comes and he'll kind of paint pictures. He's just an incredibly gifted artist. And I mentioned this to him. He's in the East Coast right now, but he was thinking maybe he could hop on as well. And I noticed he's been calling me, and maybe
Yeah.
it's too late now to bring him in or bring him on,
No,
but I thought it'd be
it's not
interesting to
too
have his
late.
perspective. So
I would love
how do we
that.
do this?
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
mid-session now.
Or mid-session. I'm learning something new too. All right. Hi, Mark.
Hey, sorry to hold you guys up. I'm with a lot of families, so it's very hard to coordinate with a group of 9 people.
No, you're good with
And
me. We're bringing you in
oh,
for your
okay,
vulnerable
Yeah.
moment here. This is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so happy
cool,
you could join because I haven't met you. But
cool,
Mark,
yeah.
I did pull up the book
Oh, okay,
here,
great. Yeah, that's
which
cool.
I
You have a
got.
copy. Yeah,
Yeah. I love it. So thank you for creating it. I love it
yeah.
because it sits on my desk and sometimes I look to it for inspiration. So thank
Uh-huh.
you for that. So, hi Mark, welcome. We're excited that you were able to
Yeah,
join. Thank you for stepping away from your family vacation and joining us from the beach.
yeah. Glad to be here.
And in the true spirit of improv, I guess you guys know I've never like 3 people on this podcast. It's always just been me and the other person. So I'm very excited about this because it's very on brand for for what you all do. Mark,
Yeah, the
ta
spontaneous.
yeah, yeah. Tell us a little bit about what brought you to improv and tell us about your relationship with improv, how that has developed and what you currently do with Asher.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, my first taste of improv was in New York City, just doing some, intro classes, and immediately I was blown away by the infinite possibility of the story creation, of just how nothing was scripted and how wide open and just the blank canvas of it. And so that's where I kind of got the taste for the potential of it. And it wasn't till many years later that I encountered Asher and Medicine Theater, and just the name alone kind of immediately honed in on the potency of this improv, but from a healing perspective, or from a place of kind of more of an inner tool than something performative. And so I just joined the class, and that was probably 10 years ago. And been with Asher in Medicine Theater since, and over time we've kind of integrated different aspects, or just kind of added on pieces, such as music, atmospheric music that kind of creates a sound props and accents, and kind of pivots in the moment, like emotional pivots or openings. And that's been really fun to kind of elaborate on and develop things that we'll do that kind of fit that, are these chimes for characters having epiphanies, or music that kind of initiates a slow motion transformation. Um, I play a charango, which is a stringed instrument from Peru, and that is a kind of introspective kind of story setting part of the experience, and a whole kind of altar of musical instruments, a lot of them just different sounds that we just weave throughout the sessions, and they just kind of bring it to life in a very abstract way. So that's one part of my kind of what I've woven into what Asher has created.
And Mark, what is your favorite part of the experience that you get to create for people? What do you think is the most impactful piece of it?
Yeah, I think, for me personally, I'm very interested in creativity, and imagination are so central to my path in life, and what my kind of alignment is. And you just meet these ideas in the world of, that's for only certain people, or that's for an artistic person, or a talented like musician, or, and I just think that is such a untruth. It's such a fallacy to think anybody is any less creative than another, and that we're entire it's just a human aspect, is that creative nature. And so I'm always looking for opportunities to challenge and confront that idea. And I think medicine theater is exactly that. It's about empowering people to reimagine their own creative sense, and to to deprogram those ideas of being good at something, and that's what makes you qualified to do something. And I think it's all about play. It's all about finding the joy in anything, and as long as you find the pleasure or the joy in something, that is what qualifies you to do it and to even be good at it. So I really enjoy kind of creating these situations where people find that, or re-identify with that part of themselves.
Yeah, I can imagine that's such an empowering position to be in. Someone said this to me just yesterday, actually. She said, sometimes life and your journey and the process that you're going through is what makes you qualified to do the thing that you're doing. Asher, is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers?
Well, I just love what Mark was saying, and I think that's so true about just empowering people. And I was thinking about this idea, like, no one's more qualified, what Mark was saying about not being more qualified. And Viola Spolin has a whole perspective on that about talent. We're thought about they're the talented one. I don't know how to. I'm not. They're the one that's good at that, and that comes up with like the entertainment business. They're the ones that are the talented ones. They're the successful ones. Or even when you're in the class, that person was really funny, and now there's like this. I'm not as good as they are. Spolin would speak to that, saying it's not true. And talent. She would say talent is just an access point, and it's just having access to the intuitive knowing dimension of play. And that it just comes with just practicing the exercises. The exercises are developed or devised to open up the intuitive knowing, and just keep with it.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Mark, welcome back. Are you back? This is a sign. You should not be working when you're at the beach.
Right. Well,
All right. Well, Asher, thank you so, so much. And Mark, if you can hear us, thank you so much. I'm so excited to share this episode with our viewers, our listeners, and I will drop all the links to Medicine Theater, and I will share your information with our viewers, and I really appreciate what you do. I love what you do. Thank you for doing what you do,
thank you,
and
sir.
I hope that many, many more people get to experience it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on today, and it was wonderful to share in this energy and be asked these questions. I really appreciate it.